The lake was called Mirror's Rest, and for good reason. Gabriel Cross had lived in the mountains for 32 years, and he'd passed this lake thousands of times. It was pristine, crystalline, reflecting the skies so perfectly that you couldn't tell where water ended and heaven began. Most people avoided it. The locals said it was cursed, that strange things happened there, that creatures from other worlds sometimes appeared in its depths. Gabriel had always dismissed such talk as frontier superstition, until the night he saw her. He'd been fishing at dusk, the sun bleeding crimson across the water surface, when he heard the sound, a voice unlike anything human, a melody that seemed to exist somewhere between music and language. Gabriel turned, and his breath caught. She was rising from the water, and she was absolutely, impossibly, undeniably real. Her upper half was human. Pale skin, dark hair that fell in waves down her back, eyes the color of the lake itself. But where human legs should have been, there was a tail, iridescent scales that caught the dying light, and threw it back in shades of silver and blue and green that seemed to shift and flow like liquid. She was a mermaid. Gabriel's rational mind attempted to process what his eyes were showing him. Mermaids weren't real. They were myths, stories told by sailors with too much whiskey and too much time at sea. They didn't exist in mountain lakes in the Colorado Territory. And yet, here she was. She froze when she saw him, and Gabriel could see the moment when fear flickered across her face. She moved to dive back into water, but Gabriel raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "Wait," he said, keeping his voice low and calm. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not even going to shoot at you or call anyone. I want to understand what you are." The mermaid stopped, half submerged, watching him with an intelligence that was absolutely unmistakable. She studied him for a long moment, and then, slowly, she rose again, enough that her face cleared the water. "I am Nerida," she said, her voice carrying an accent that Gabriel couldn't place. "I have lived in these mountains for longer than your kind has inhabited this continent. I thought I was safe here, hidden in the depths where no one could reach me. But you saw me." "Yes," Gabriel said. "I did, and I'm not afraid of you." "You should be," Nerida said. "Every human who has ever known what I am has tried to capture me, to display me, to prove their discovery to the world. I have learned to fear your kind." Gabriel sat down on the rocks by the lake, making himself non-threatening. "I'm not like that," he said. "I just want to understand." For 3 weeks, Gabriel returned to the lake every evening. Nerida would appear as the sun was setting, and they would talk. She told him stories about the underwater cities where her kind lived, about the magic that existed in the deepest places on Earth, about how she'd been separated from her family during a great storm and had been alone in this lake for nearly a century. "A century?" Gabriel asked, trying to comprehend. "My people live much longer than yours," Nerida said. "We measure time differently. 100 years is not so long for me." Gabriel told her about his life in the mountains, the solitude he'd chosen, the way he'd come to understand the land, the loneliness that had defined his existence. He told her things he'd never told anyone, and Nerida listened with a kind of rapt attention that suggested his words mattered to her. On the 21st night, as the moon was rising over the peaks, Gabriel realized he was completely and utterly in love with her. It was irrational. It was impossible. She was a creature from another world, from another reality entirely. But her intelligence captivated him. Her vulnerability moved him. Her presence transformed his solitude into something that felt like solitude chosen, rather than solitude endured. "I need to tell you something," Gabriel said, and his voice carried the weight of confession. "I'm in love with you. I know that's impossible. I know that you're from a world I can't even comprehend. But I need you to know." Nerida was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched his face with a hand that was warm and real and utterly present. "I am in love with you too," she said. "I did not think such a thing was possible. But you see me. You don't try to capture me or control me. You simply see me." The problem was obvious and insurmountable. Gabriel lived on land. Nerida was a creature of water. She couldn't survive on dry land for more than a few hours before her scales would begin to dry out, becoming brittle and painful. Gabriel couldn't survive underwater. Their worlds were fundamentally incompatible. "I'll build something," Gabriel said, the idea forming as he spoke. "A cabin by the lake, with a water room, a space where you could be comfortable, where you could be inside but still in water. We could build a life together." "That's insane," Nerida said, but there was hope in her voice. "Probably," Gabriel agreed, "but I've spent 32 years alone. I'm not spending another day without trying to be with you." The construction took 4 months. Gabriel worked with his own hands, building a cabin that extended partially into the lake. He created a large pool, fed by the lake's water, maintained at the perfect temperature, deep enough for Nerida to dive and swim. He built a connecting door, so she could move between the pool and the cabin proper. He created a bedroom where they could sleep together, his body on the land side, hers partially in the water, their hands always able to touch. The townspeople thought he was mad. They watched him build and whispered about the old mountain man who'd lost his mind. But Gabriel didn't care. He was building a home for the woman he loved, and that was the only thing that mattered. When the cabin was finished, Nerida left the lake for the first time in a century. Gabriel carried her from the water into the cabin, and she gasped as she experienced the sensation of air against her entire body. He laid her in the pool he'd created, and she settled into the water with a sigh of contentment. "This is beautiful," she whispered. "You built this for me?" "I built this for us," Gabriel said, "for whatever kind of life we can have together." The transition was difficult in ways Gabriel hadn't anticipated. Nerida had spent 100 years alone in the lake. She didn't understand human customs, human language, human society. She was confused by simple things: clothing, cooking, the concept of linear time as humans understood it. But she was intelligent and adaptable, and she learned with the kind of hunger that suggested she'd been starving for intellectual stimulation. More importantly, they loved each other in a way that transcended the fundamental incompatibility of their natures. Gabriel would read to her while she floated in the pool. She would tell him stories from the deep, tales of bioluminescent cities and creatures that existed nowhere else on Earth. They would make love in the twilight space between water and air, their bodies finding ways to connect that honored both their natures. The townspeople gradually adjusted to Gabriel's strange companion. He never brought her into town, never tried to display her or prove her existence. But people noticed that the old hermit seemed happy in a way he never had before. He was kinder, more present, more engaged with the world. A year into their life together, Gabriel made a decision that shocked everyone. He established a trust, a legal document that granted Nerida ownership of the cabin and the surrounding land, making it impossible for anyone to claim her or force her out after he died. He left instructions that she was to be protected, that her existence was to remain secret, that the cabin and its water pool would be maintained as a sanctuary for her. He was preparing for a future where he would eventually be gone, but she would remain. Nerida was furious when she found out. "You're preparing for your death," she said, her voice angry and sad in equal measure. "But I will still be here. Alone again. How is that fair?" "It's not fair," Gabriel admitted, "but it's necessary. I love you too much to leave you vulnerable. I need to know that when I'm gone, you'll be protected." "I don't want protection," Nerida said. "I want you to live forever. I want us to have eternity together, the way my people do." Gabriel pulled her close, half her body in water, half her body against his chest. "Then we'll make the most of the time I do have," he said. "We'll build something so beautiful that even after I'm gone it will matter." 5 years into their relationship, a scientist came to the mountains. He'd heard rumors, locals talking about strange things at the old cowboy's cabin, about a woman who never left the property, about something impossible living at Mirror's Rest. The scientist was determined to prove that the stories were true, that Gabriel had discovered something extraordinary. Gabriel met him at the gate with a rifle. "There's nothing here for you," Gabriel said. "And if you try to cross this property line, I will shoot you. That's not a threat. That's a promise." The scientist left, but not before making threats of his own. Threats about scientists, researchers, people who would come with authority and force. That night, Gabriel and Nerida made a decision together. They would disappear. Gabriel sold the cabin to a wealthy investor from Denver with strict instructions that it never be opened, never be explored, never be disturbed. He took Nerida in a specially designed carriage with water tanks that kept her comfortable, and they traveled east, away from the mountains, away from the frontier. They settled in a remote area near the Great Lakes, where water was abundant and isolated. Gabriel built a new cabin, another sanctuary, another home. They lived there together, far from the curiosity of scientists and the judgment of society. 20 years later, Gabriel was old. His hair was completely white. His body was beginning to fail in the ways that age always demands. He and Nerida had built a quiet life together. No children, no connection to the world, just the two of them and the water that was her home. One evening, sitting by the lake near their cabin, Gabriel told Nerida something he'd been thinking about for years. "I'm dying," he said simply. "I can feel it. Maybe a year, maybe less." Nerida's eyes filled with tears, actual tears that mingled with the water of the lake. "I know," she said. "I have always known. Your kind is brief and mine is eternal. That is the cruelty of what we are. But we were happy," Gabriel said. "We built something impossible and made it real. We loved each other across the boundaries of worlds. That matters." "It matters," Nerida agreed. "It matters more than anything." Gabriel died 8 months later, peacefully, in the cabin by the lake. Nerida mourned him in her own way, by spending weeks in the deepest part of the lake, singing songs that no human would ever hear, mourning the man who had loved her enough to build impossible things, who had seen her as something precious rather than something to be captured or exploited. But she survived. The trust Gabriel had established ensured that the cabin was maintained, that the lake was protected, that she would have sanctuary for the rest of her eternal life. The mountain man who'd found a strange creature in the water had fallen in love with her, completely, impossibly, irreversibly. And the mermaid who'd been alone for a century had discovered that love transcended the boundaries between worlds, that someone could choose to build impossible things for the sake of connection, that partnership could exist even when the fundamental nature of two beings was incompatible. Their love story became legend, whispered about in mountain towns, dismissed as folklore, the kind of story people told when they'd had too much whiskey. But those who knew Gabriel, who'd witnessed the transformation of the solitary mountain man into someone capable of profound love, understood that sometimes the most real things are the ones the world refuses to believe in. Gabriel had built sanctuaries for the woman he loved. Nerida had learned that love could bridge impossible gaps. Together, they created something that existed outside the bounds of normal reality, a love story written in water and stone, in impossible choices and genuine commitment. And long after Gabriel was gone, Nerida remained in the lake, remembering the man who'd seen her not as a curiosity, but as a person worthy of love, worthy of protection, worthy of having an entire life built around her needs. That was their love story, wild, impossible, and absolutely, completely real in the ways that mattered most.